Let's do it.
I'm Zach Bingham. I'm the COO of Automio. A lot of you have met me, but many of you also haven't. I've been with Automio since the very early days. I got involved because I'm a childhood friend of Claudia, basically. I'm an ex-lawyer as well. I noticed a few comments in the chat earlier about large US corporate law firms, and I worked in one of those for a while, and I agreed with the comments. But when I came back to New Zealand, I joined Claudia and her what was a very early sort of idea of what Automio was going to be. I joined her as her salesperson. Basically, she was the CEO. We had two tech people, and we had a product, and so she needed a sales team, and looked at me, and that's what I became. And so I spent the first about 18 months in that role, and that's where I would have met a number of you over that time. Now, in the operational role, I tend to sort of hover in the background. I don't get a lot of time to work directly with customers. You'll see me pop up every now and again in the chats on Facebook, and I like to have a little bit of a cameo at these sorts of events as well. But basically, my job is to sit in the background and make sure everything runs smoothly and that you guys get the best value from Automio and everything we have to offer. Do want to say at any point, more than happy for anyone to get in touch with me, and a number of you do, but for the people who haven't met me, email, phone, anytime. It's always really good to catch up and get your feedback. So what I'm going to talk to you about in this really short session today is my role, how it came about, and some principles and a little bit of a framework by which you can use in your own firms to guide you through that principle of going to 7 figures and what you need to do with your team and your own position in your firm to do that. And I'll just sort of carry on with a little bit of the story behind how I ended up here, just to colour where I'm sort of coming from. And we invented the COO position at about the same time as we hit 7 figures. And looking back on it, that is completely coincidental that that's when it happened. But of course, now we understand why we needed to create that role. And basically what we've done is we've broken the business. So Claudia had started it. She was the CEO. She was doing all of the things. And she was in the day-to-day of the business. She got to the point where really what she needed to be doing was leading the strategy, doing the things that she was good at, focusing on growing the business, but was stuck doing all of that day-to-day sort of stuff. So the moral of the story is Claudia is now mostly out of the running of the day-to-day business. She spoke briefly this morning about how she's focusing more on the product side of the business as well. And I guess spoiler alert for where I'm going with this tactic is that the moral of the story is that the more we've taken Claudia out of the day-to-day running of the business and given her the space to innovate and focus on growth and the key areas of where we want our business to go and our goals, the faster the business has grown. And you can see that just in the number of people who are attending today compared to how many people we had in Sydney, which is more than double. More than double in sort of 6 or 7 months, and through the biggest economic crisis that we've seen, certainly in our working lives, and we've had a few. So why do you need to do this? Why do you need, as the leaders of your business, to remove yourself from the day-to-day running the business? Well, as we know, that you can hustle as hard as you like, you can work as many hours as you like, you can work as hard as you like, but you're only doing that going to get yourself to the level of where you're probably earning a few $100,000, and that's great. But if you want to go to that next level, to that 7-figure level and beyond, you really need to get your mindset, your goals, and your team in the right place. So I've got a basic diagram. I'm calling it the 7 seven-figure firm triangle. And the first thing that we really want to encourage you all to do, and I know Claudia's talks about this, and I've done a little bit of stuff on this myself, a couple of cameos on Facebook. But basically, the first step is that you need to fire yourself. Fire yourself. And what do I mean by that? Obviously, that's quite an emotive sort of way of putting it. But what I really mean by that is that you need to have the mindset that actually you can step away from doing a lot of what you do in the day-to-day of your business. And you may be very good at a lot of these tasks, but are they your strengths? Is it what gets the most value for your business? So in my case, if I was basically to summarize my job, I'd say that I do all of the things that Claudia doesn't want to do and all of the things that are outside of her real zone of genius. Claudia's amazing to do that for because she's so self-aware of it, and she's so open and honest about what she's good at and what she's not. And I would encourage all of you to be the same. Something that lawyers aren't always good at, I can say this because I was one, we're not great at always accepting that other people can do parts of our jobs as well as we can. And that's really important for you to do if you're going to achieve the goal of firing yourself. Somebody will be able to do the work as good as you can. You need to trust other people. You need to trust that other people will be able to kick ass in your business as employees. Of course, that comes down to having the right hiring processes and getting the right people in place. And we have a number of trainings on that. And that really, at the end of the day, once you've got the structures in place, you need to get yourself away. You need to fire yourself from doing the things that aren't playing to your particular strengths and that you don't enjoy. And so for most of us, making that mindset switch to delegate some of what we've perceived to this point as being the most important tasks, it's actually one of the hardest decisions you'll have to do. It's one of the hardest actions you'll have to take. It's something that Claudia taught me how to do. And I now teach the rest of our team how to do as well. Delegation is such an important thing. And that's basically what this is. So the second really important principle with the seven-figure firm triangle is that you need to know what your goals are. You need to know what your goals are. Why do we need to know what our goals are? Well, how do we know where we're going if we don't know what our goals are? How do we communicate that to the rest of our team if they don't know what they are? How do we keep the ship steering in the right direction if we don't have these kind of North Star principles guiding us? So important that you work on your 90-day plans and your 12-month plans. At Automio, we have quarterly plans, we have a yearly plan, and we have a 3-year plan. And those things change all the time, but the general principles we're always working towards, and it's so important. And then the final element that you really need to get in place to be able to fire yourself, to move away, to create the structure to get yourself to that 7-figure team, is to get the right team in place. So we've talked about, and we have a number of trainings about the hiring processes. We have a really quite an unusual, in my experience, but then I was in the big law firms, so very standard hiring process there. But we have a lot of fun with our hiring processes. Some of you may have seen our job ads. We always have a couple of hooks in there. People have to reply, for instance, directly to me with some word in the subject heading. It helps us identify the people who have good attention to detail, that sort of stuff. We require videos rather than cover letters. Videos are great because a lot of people don't want to do them. And if people don't want to do them, well, then it's an easy way to vet them out because they're not going to be very successful with us if they don't like being on video. Um, and then we also do something which I'd never heard of until I started working with Claudia, which is we do group interviews. So when we do the first shortlist of people, we get them in the room together. It's not so much about seeing who is more dominant or who's performs better in a group, but it's just about seeing the different interactions, the willingness for people to do something which is slightly different. We had one case recently where we were hired. We thought we had one candidate we thought was going to be brilliant. They wouldn't do a group interview. Red flag straight away. They didn't want to do something that was making them feel a bit uncomfortable, that was a bit different. So obviously we do everything different, and that was a really good way to sort of vet that person out. So hiring the team, getting your right team in place, it takes time, and you won't get it right 100% of the time, but it is just so important. So I guess we were quite lucky in that respect. Well, I should say we're quite lucky in that respect of how it's worked out for Claudia and I. We work really well together. I was sort of put into this role because of circumstance, and probably that we work well together. But you've got to find that person that you can really trust, or those people that you can really trust to form your team. So that's my 10-minute tactic. You got questions, Will?
Awesome, thanks, Zach. I can definitely attest to Zach being the king of delegation, not because he gives us all the jobs, but because he gets us to do the same thing in terms of, if we've got too much on our plate, the first place to go is to get some of them off, and he's really fantastic at sort of teaching you tactics to do that, because it is difficult to do a lot of the time. So I can definitely attest to that. One question we had come through from Catherine was just around the group interview. She's just is the group interview with all candidates, but run us through sort of how you've done that previously in terms of the group interview and how many people you have in the room and how that usually works.
Yeah, so it's not done with all candidates. It's done with a short list of candidates. Obviously, we tend to get quite a few applications for the roles that we advertise for. So you shortlist your candidates as you ordinarily would, and then we have a set of quite generic questions, depending on what the role is. Similar kinds of questions that you would use for any role that you were hiring for, probably. I think from memory we may have shared some interview questions in one of the trainings, but I'm sure that's a resource we can put together as well fairly easily for you. But standard sort of stuff, share it around the room, try and get kind of interactions from each different person. We did one where we had everyone physically in a room. We've done a couple now where we've done them virtually. George, who came on with us recently, came in on a group interview, performed very well. Here he is today.
That's awesome. Do you have like a way to, I guess, stop someone from overpowering a situation like that? Because that was my sort of immediate thought. When you get sort of people in a room gunning for a job, how do you stop someone from, I guess, controlling the whole interview?
Not something that I've really come across. I guess when I interview in the group situation, the questions are always pointed at a particular person. So you're not leaving it open to the room. You're not just posing a general question. I tend to have a set of questions and make sure I ask people directly. And thinking about it, I usually start with giving everyone a little bit like a sort of politician's interview, if you like, or debate. You give them sort of 30 seconds to a minute to introduce themselves, and then ask sort of pointed questions at each different person.
Awesome. I just sort of asked a question around firing yourself, and at what point would you recommend sort of looking to do that, or what position do you think a company needs to be for Ava to fire herself?
Yeah, we should probably make clear that you can fire yourself gradually, and there are still parts of our business that I'm wrestling away from Claudia, and that's a good thing. I think that you can start with the things you enjoy doing least, and then build it and work on from there. So you don't have to sort of step away from the day-to-day running the business completely. And even for when Claudia and I first started in the COO role, I'd never managed cash flow before. I'd never managed accounts before, anything like that. So naturally, that was a staged process where, for the first few months, Claudia and I were working together, and then she got comfortable, and then she moved further and further out of that, and now I do it all sort of completely autonomously. In fact, sometimes I tell Claudia she can't spend money now. So that's how far we've come.
That's awesome. Any other questions for Zach while he's here? Otherwise, we'll jump to a quick 2-minute dance break and we'll bring in the next 10-minute tactic. I guess, for Zach is fantastic, as I said, at the delegation side of things, but also in terms of, I guess, understanding our roles and what's involved with those, which makes having those conversations around delegation, I guess easy, because he understands sort of what parts of the role we need to be focusing on at certain times. For the most part, it's the cash money side of things, because that's what rules the roost. But which is perfect. And in line with that, Lisa's shared a question around: do you share all goals and numbers with the full team, or or how do you share, I guess, our goals with us and the wider team, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so we share all broad financial and other goals with the team, and we have quarterly exec team meetings where we all sit around and we set all of the business and financial goals together. On a day-to-day basis, we don't share the financials with the team more broadly, but we sort of do on a quarterly basis, so that everyone knows what's going on. So we keep quite an open book about things.
Yeah, I would say that from my end as well. We definitely know the targets and where we're at, and it's awesome, I guess, being part of that journey. Obviously, we don't get shared all the details, but the details that we do get and the goals that we get are, I guess, really motivating and really insightful for pushing us to get there.
And I think important to have, if you want your team to have buy-in, to have them as part of the decision-making process when you are setting the goals as well.
Agreed. Gillian, I think that's probably a question for the wider group, but she's just asked around: where does everyone advertise for lawyers who want to work differently? I guess on that note, what are our sort of typical advertising avenues? How do you get our messaging out there?
It depends if differently, do we mean like kind of the language you use in the ads, that sort of stuff, or differently in terms of where we market. So we market typically in our social media channels and on Seek or Trade Me, which is our kind of eBay here in New Zealand. So quite standard from that perspective. But the language that we use and what we include in our job interviews and the process that's included in the job interviews is quite different to anything I've ever seen. The last one I think I had quite a few people read and come back and comment to me on certain aspects of it that they found particularly interesting or engaging or amusing. So which definitely, like, if you've got a particular type of philosophy or the way that you run your firm, then why not have it in the job interview, like in the job ad rather, because you're wanting to attract the right people from the start. So if we had a stock standard ordinary job ad and we attracted the kinds of people that may attract. That's not to say you won't get more sort of interesting and different and innovative people marketing that way, but you will end up with people that would find the way that we do business and the stuff that we do and our philosophies probably quite terrifying. So I think your entire process should really reflect the type of business or type of firm that you're running and trying to create.
Perfect. Claudia's just noted there one of the key update or the key inclusions in the job description is can take blunt and direct feedback.
That was the one that I got a number of comments on, and and it was right at the end of the job ad too. It was quite long, so a lot of people read it properly, which is good.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for the questions. Thank you very much, Zach. We'll give you some Zoom reactions, a few claps and thumbs up there.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you're really enjoying the intensive so far. It's so amazing to see all of you and from all over the world, and even just to be standing in this little studio we've set up in the back room. All really cool stuff that we're able to do because of you guys. So thank you.